Incredible son saved by Maid from kidnapper, shocking truth exposed, brother's hidden betrayal. Ethan was the shining star in a small Midwestern town, the pride of his single mother, Sarah, who worked tirelessly at the local diner, grinning through her exhaustion as she served pancakes for breakfast and coffee as strong as her spirit. Every meal shared was a testament to their unwavering love, even when the shadows of financial struggle loomed over them. But on that fateful afternoon, a dark cloud descended. Walking home from school, the air filled with the sweet scent of summer, he was snatched away like a whisper carried off by the wind. Panic gripped Sarah's heart as she realized Ethan was missing. Maria, their loyal housekeeper, felt the tension hanging in the air. Known for her intuitive nature, the immigrant woman was a lifeline for Sarah and her boys. Maria's heart raced as she scanned the familiar streets, her mind piecing together clues that led her to suspect Ethan was held captive. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the dark unknown, a beacon of hope lighting her way. As news spread through the town, neighbors came together, lighting candles that flickered like stars in the night sky. Prayers filled the air, wrapping the community in warmth and strength. But then, from the shadows, whispers began to emerge. They flickered through the crowd, pulsing with tension, focused on Ethan's older brother, Jake. Caught in the crossfire of jealousy and insecurity, he always felt overshadowed by Ethan's successes. Instead of championing his baby brother, he harbored hidden grudges. The question loomed like a storm cloud: could resentment lead him to betray his own flesh and blood? The rescue mission unfolded quickly, a heart-racing whirlwind of frantic motions as Maria led the charge. Relief flooded the town when Ethan was finally reunited with his family, but as the hugs and cheers erupted, a chill settled over Jake. He felt the weight of unspoken words grip his throat. The laughter surrounding them became a bitter reminder of a bond that felt strained. What he saw as a competition over family loyalty now threatened to tear them apart. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the aftermath, as the sun set on another day, Sarah tried to mend the fragile threads of their family through old-fashioned barbecues and warm gatherings, her laughter mingling with the sizzle of burgers on the grill. Yet, beneath the laughter lay unresolved emotions. Jake stared at Ethan, his heart heavy with his internal battle. The question taunted him: was his brother's success worth the chasm it carved into their brotherhood? As the community continued to rally around them, loving gestures and heartfelt support reminded them of the strength found in togetherness. But deep down, Jake wrestled with ghosts of the past that refused to leave. Just as healing seemed within reach, an unexpected revelation threatened to unravel everything. They were standing on a precipice between reconciliation and destruction, caught in the tumultuous storm of their own making. Would a family built on love and laughter be torn apart by betrayal? Evenings turned cool as autumn slowly painted the trees in hues of amber and rust. Sarah filled her days with work, her laughter ringing in the confines of the diner, but at home, the silence was deafening. The joyous moments were but a fragile veil over the increasing tension between her two sons. Underneath the seemingly idyllic family gatherings lay a seismic rift. Ethan, oblivious to the turmoil swirling around him, resumed his after-school routine, his laughter echoing off the walls of their modest home. It was Jake who heard those sounds and felt an ache that expanded within him. He watched Ethan's carefree spirit dance in and out of the living room, chasing shadows with a joy that felt foreign to him now. The smile on Ethan's face was a distant memory of what Jake had once shared. One evening, as they gathered for dinner, Sarah attempted to lighten the mood. "How about we watch that old family movie tonight?" she suggested, her bright eyes searching both of their faces. She was met with a silence so profound it wrapped around her like a cold fog. Jake and Ethan exchanged fleeting glances, but neither spoke. Words hung heavy in the air, unspoken yet palpable. After dinner, as the credits rolled on the flickering screen, Jake could no longer contain the storm within him. "Why do you always need to be the center of attention?" he shot out, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Everyone froze. Ethan's eyes widened, confusion clouding his features. "What do you mean, Jake?" he asked, searching for a clue that might bridge the distance between them. Jake's heart raced, blistering emotions spilling out like lava. He could feel the fight erupting inside him, his jealousy and love collided in a frenzy. "You think you're so perfect. What about me, huh? Don't you see how it feels to be in your shadow?" Each word hit like a stone, and the weight of Jake's accusation hung heavy in the room, their mother's breath caught in her throat. She looked from one son to the other, sensing the unbearable tension. "Jake, don't say that. Ethan loves you. You're brothers." "Brothers?" Jake laughed bitterly, an edge to his voice. "You think that means anything? How can I be proud when everyone sees Ethan as the golden boy?" The pain in Ethan's eyes stung like a slap. "I never wanted to be anything but your brother. I just want to make Mom proud," he begged, desperation creeping into his voice. Disappointment swirled in Jake's chest, thickening the air between them. It was a cycle he couldn't shake, a serpent coiled tightly in his thoughts. "I want to be proud of you too, but you make it so hard." Before he could say more, Sarah stepped in, desperately trying to soothe the growing rift, to wrap them both in the maternal embrace that had worked before. "This isn't okay, boys. We're a family. Let us find a way to talk about this together." But in that moment of vulnerability, an unexpected knock shattered the fragile atmosphere. The sound echoed through the silence, surprising them all. Sarah exchanged worried glances with her sons. They were not the only ones hiding secrets. "Who could that be?" she whispered, holding her breath, anxiety twinkling in her eyes. Was it another neighbor checking in or something much more sinister? As the door creaked open, all eyes turned, hearts pounding in unison. Would this new visitor bring answers or deepen the shadows looming over their family? The door opened slowly, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the dim light of the porch. It took a moment for Sarah's eyes to adjust, and when they did, her heart sank. Standing there was Mark, the estranged brother she hadn't seen in years, the dust of neglect palpable in the air between them. "Mark," her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Jake's eyes narrowed, suspicion etched across his face. "What are you doing here?" Ethan, caught between confusion and surprise, wavered at the entrance. "Uncle Mark." He breathed, a hint of hope tinting his voice, but the joy quickly faded as tension filled the room. "Can we talk?" Mark's voice was firm, yet his eyes flickered with a vulnerability that mirrored Jake's uncertainty. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, the air heavy with his presence. Sarah stepped forward, her protective instincts kicking in. "What do you want, Mark? After all this time?" "I came to make things right," he replied, glancing around at the boys, their expressions a mix of curiosity and resentment. "I've heard things about the family. I need to explain." Jake crossed his arms, defiance radiating from him. "You expect us to believe you care?" "Maybe I don't deserve that trust," Mark conceded, shifting his gaze to Ethan. "But I can help. I know things." His voice trailed off, laden with unshared secrets. Sarah sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "What do you mean you know things?" Her heart raced, the tension knotting tighter like a noose. Mark hesitated, glancing nervously at Ethan. "It's about the accident and someone who might still be a danger to you both." Ethan's eyes became wide, the innocence he was holding on to slowly cracking. "What accident?" "Mark, don't." Sarah interjected, trembling. This was how she wanted to reveal the fractured pieces of their past, but Jake leaned in, his curiosity outweighing his anger. "What are you talking about?" Mark finally exhaled sharply, as if the admission had been boiling inside him for years. "I was there, boys. When it happened I saw everything. And I know who was behind it." The truth hung in the air like thick fog, a mix of terror and anticipation growing in the silence. Jake stared at Mark, feeling a storm of emotions rise. Could this man really have the answers? A part of him wanted to reach out, to reconcile, but another part screamed for caution. "They're after you again," Mark continued, his voice lowering as if the walls had ears. "I overheard a conversation, but why should we trust you?" Jake shot back, fighting the urge to listen. "Because I'm your family. And families protect each other," Mark urged, his intensity palpable. "This time, it's not just about being in a shadow. We're talking about real danger." Ethan stepped closer, his childlike faith battling against his brother's skepticism. "What kind of danger?" Mark inhaled deeply, a haunting look flashing in his eyes. "We need to leave. If they find out I'm here, they won't stop until they get what they want." As fear gripped the room, something shifted in Sarah. She felt that familiar rising tide of determination. "No," she said firmly, looking at her sons. "Whatever is happening, we're going to face it together." Mark nodded, his demeanor shifting from resigned to resolute. "Then let us prepare. There's no time to waste." With the impending threat heavy in their hearts, the family's fragile bonds stitched together by fear and shared history suddenly felt more vital than ever. They had questions, secrets yet to be revealed, and a past filled with shadows. Could they truly come together in the face of what was to come, or would those very shadows tear them apart? Mark shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their scrutiny, his hands clenched at his sides. "I promise I'm not here to hurt anyone. Just listen," he implored, his voice cracking slightly. Jake shot a glance over at Sarah, searching for reassurance. She gave him a resolute nod, her own fears swirling beneath a surface of determination. Together, they couldn't let this moment slip away. They needed answers for Ethan, and for themselves. "Okay, we'll listen," Jake said, his voice steady, but with an edge of defiance. "But if you pull any tricks, I swear I know, you'll shove me out that door," Mark interrupted, his lips pulling into a thin line. "But this isn't a game to me." He took a deep breath and began. "The accident was no accident. Someone wanted it to happen. They wanted our family broken." Ethan, still grappling with the reality of the situation, blinked, confusion mixing with dread. "Why would anyone want to hurt us?" "That's what I need to explain," Mark faltered, guilt creeping into his expression. Realizing his silence was only amplifying the uncertainty, he pressed on. "I didn't just run off, boys. I was scared of who was after me, who might also come for you." "Why now, Mark?" Sarah asked, her voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Why come back when you could have helped before?" He hesitated, memories flashing through his mind. "I thought I could protect you from a distance," he admitted bitterly. "I underestimated their reach. I thought it was safer that way. But then I overheard something that changed everything. They're planning something terrible. They want the answers we have, and they'll stop at nothing to get them." Jake stepped back slightly, wrestling with emotions he didn't fully understand. Trust was a fragile thing, easily broken. But fear gnawed at him, too. "What answers? What do you mean?" Mark turned to Ethan, whose innocent eyes searched for clarity. "It's about the family legacy, about what we've lost. What you don't know could put you in danger. But if we stand together, there's a chance we can figure it all out." "We can't let fear control us," Sarah finally said, grounding herself in the chaos. "But we need a plan. We can't just run without knowing what we're running from." Mark's eyes sparked with sudden intensity. "We can start by going to the old family home. There, we might find clues, maps, anything to piece together what they want." Looking between Mark and her boys, an unsettling weight settled over Sarah. She understood the danger so deeply, yet they were standing at the precipice of a truth that might change everything. "Let us do it, then," Jake declared, surprised by his own conviction. "If we're all in this together, we can't back down now." Mark's face softened for a moment, a flicker of familial warmth washing over him. "Thank you, I know this is hard," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan reached for Jake's hand, grounding him. "We'll face it together, right?" Sarah felt her heart expand with that feeling, a beacon of hope cutting through the fear. "Together," she affirmed, her voice steady as she moved closer to her boys. As they began to gather supplies, the air shifted with purpose. Yet Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they investigated, the more the shadows would stretch long behind them. Unbeknownst to them, the danger lurked closer than they realized, watching, waiting. They were moments away from uncovering a truth that would not only impact their future, but also rattle the foundations of their past. What had started as a family reunion was becoming a storm, and Sarah had to wonder, would it tear them apart or forge an unbreakable bond? Would they be ready for the secrets waiting to be revealed? The car ride to the old family home was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of shifting supplies. Sarah glanced over at Mark, who seemed lost in thought, staring out the window as the familiar landscape whizzed by. Jake sat beside her, his hands clenched, the tightness in his jaw evident. Ethan, wedged between his brother and Mark, fidgeted, his eyes darting between them, trying to gauge the weight of their shared history. "Are we sure about this?" Jake finally broke the silence, his voice low but laced with urgency. "I mean, what if they really are watching us?" Mark turned, his expression serious. "We need to take that risk. If they are following us, we can't let fear dictate our steps. We go, we search, we find out what they want. Together." "Together," Ethan echoed softly, but Sarah could see the uncertainty in his eyes. She reached over and squeezed his knee, trying to project strength. As they approached the family home, overgrown weeds clawing at the edges of the driveway, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Memories flooded back, the joy of birthday parties, summer barbecues, and the laughter that once echoed through these halls. Now, it felt like a ghost of what it used to be, darkened by secrets and shadows. Mark parked the car, and they climbed out, the weight of the air thick with unspoken words. The house loomed before them, its peeling paint looking more tired than she remembered. With a deep breath, Sarah led the way up the creaky porch steps. The familiar groan of the wood underfoot sent a shiver down her spine. "Right, then," Mark said, his voice gathering strength. "We need to check the attic first. If there are any old documents, they could be there." "Why the attic?" Jake asked, skepticism seeping into his tone. "Because that's where we stored everything after everything that happened. It was the safest place to hide things. If there's any evidence of what they're after, it'll be up there." Sarah pushed the door open, its hinges squeaking in protest, and stepped inside. Dust motes floated in the sunlight streaming through the grimy windows. The scent of old wood and forgotten memories wrapped around her, filling her with equal parts nostalgia and dread. They climbed the staircase, the air growing thicker with each step. Mark led the way, and she followed closely behind, Jake and Ethan trailing. As they reached the attic door, Mark hesitated, his hand hovering over the knob. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked, glancing back at them. "Yes," Jake answered firmly. "Then let us find out what's been hidden," Sarah added, pushing past her own fear. Mark opened the door, revealing a dusty space littered with boxes and old furniture covered by dusty sheets. They began sifting through the chaos, tossing aside old photographs and forgotten toys as they searched for anything that might help unravel their mystery. Minutes passed, turning into what felt like hours. Just as fatigue made Sarah want to sit, something caught her eye, a box tucked under the eaves, half hidden and seemingly untouched. She reached for it, her heart racing as she pulled it out into the light. When she popped it open, an array of documents lay inside, yellowed and brittle. But it was the glinting object nestled amongst the papers that made her gasp. A small silver locket, familiar and iridescent, glimmered like a dark star. "Mom," Sarah breathed, recognizing it instantly. The last memory she had of her mother was of her wearing that locket, an irreplaceable piece of their family's history, but as she turned it over, her heart dropped. Beneath the familiar clasp, an engraving was visible, initials she didn't recognize. This wasn't just a trinket. It was a key, perhaps to the very secrets they were trying to unlock. "Sarah, what is it?" Jake asked, peering over her shoulder. Before she could answer, a noise echoed from below. It was faint, but undeniably there a voice that sent ice through her veins. "Someone's here," Mark said, his voice tightening with urgency, heart racing. Sarah exchanged frantic glances with her family. The intruder was closing in, and they might have just stumbled onto something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. As footsteps approached the front door, a chilling realization washed over them. They weren't alone anymore. "What do we do?" Ethan whispered, fear etched across his face. With the locket clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah took a deep breath. "It's time to stand together," she said, glancing at her family. But deep inside, a storm of uncertainty brewed. What had they truly awakened? And as the footsteps grew louder, they all knew there was no turning back now. The footsteps grew louder, thudding in a rhythmic pace that mirrored Sarah's pounding heart. She darted her gaze around the attic, searching for anything they could use as protection. The dust-coated air felt charged, as if anticipation loomed over them like a thunderstorm waiting to break. "Hide," Mark whispered, urgency etched on his face. He gestured subtly to a stack of boxes leaning against the wall, promising a bit of cover. With a quick nod, the siblings slipped behind the boxes, crouching low, the wooden floor creaking under their weight. Sarah pressed the locket against her chest, its cool surface grounding her in a moment of unbearable tension. She could barely breathe, her senses on fire, every creak of the house echoing like a siren in the silence. Moments stretched into what felt like an eternity, their eyes locked in a collective fear as the footsteps paused just below them. The muffled voice was clearer now, its tone a mix of frustration and eagerness. "They have to be here," it said, cutting through the quiet like a knife. Mark shifted slightly, trying to listen more carefully. "Do you recognize it?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Ethan shook his head sharply while Jake grimaced, his fists tightening around the edges of a box. They all knew that whatever it was, they needed to stay out of sight. The front door creaked open, the hinges groaning under the weight of secrets long forgotten. A figure stepped inside, shrouded in shadows. It was bulky, definitely not a friendly face. As the intruder called out names, demanding answers, Sarah clutched the locket tighter, her mind racing. Who could it be? Why were they searching for her family? Panic threatened to engulf her, but she fought it back. She couldn't show fear, not now. "Look upstairs," the figure ordered, and Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. Ethan breathed heavily, his anxiety palpable. "What if they find us?" "Then we have to be ready," Jake replied, stealing a glance at Mark. "We can't let them take us." The intruder began to move up the stairs, each step heavy and methodical. As they reached the attic door, the shadowed figure paused, listening. It felt like time itself had stopped. Here the voice was a low growl, filled with ugly intent. "I know you're up there." Mark looked around, desperate. "We can't stay here. We need a distraction." Sarah's mind flashed back to childhood games. Bravery came so easily back then. "I can create a diversion," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'll throw something." "No. It's too risky," Jake protested, fear tightening his features. "It's our only chance," Sarah insisted. "If I can get them to look away, we can escape." Mark hesitated, and then nodded. "We stick together, no matter what. On 3. 1 2. Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. A neighbor's old tree branch had broken, landing against the roof. The intruder turned abruptly. What was that? The moment was theirs. Now. Jake shouted, all uncertainty gone as he surged forward, trusting Sarah to follow. Adrenaline propelled them, racing for the attic exit marked by the wooden stairway. They bolted down the creaky steps, hearts pounding in sync with their feet. Go, go. Mark shouted, pushing Ethan ahead. He turned back just as they reached the bottom, bracing himself for the confrontation, but instead of an intruder blocking their path, the air was tinged with a new urgency. Moving quickly, they darted through the house's back door into the wild, overgrown yard, the very same yard that held memories of childhood adventures. Once outside, they stopped, breathing heavily, the panic of escape mingling with disbelief at what they had just faced. What the hell just happened? Jake panted, looking back at the house as though it might collapse under the weight of its secrets. Sarah's hands shook uncontrollably as she clutched the locket. What if this was about more than just us? She whispered, her voice trembling with newfound fear. What if they were looking for this? And as the truth hung heavily between them, they realized that the danger wasn't just outside. It was deeper. More personal. The locket wasn't just a family heirloom, it was the key to unlocking betrayals they never anticipated. Who did we really trust? Mark asked, his expression darkening with recognition. As shadows stretched long behind them, they faced the unknown head-on. Who had left the locket? Who had betrayed them? And what was waiting for them in the uncharted paths ahead, now that they had taken the first step? The ripples of their choices were about to open doors they might not be prepared to handle, but there was no going back now. They stood there in the yard, the evening sky turning a bruised purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Sarah's heart raced faster than the words swirling in her mind. She turned to Mark, Jake, and Ethan, each of them drenched in the reality of their escape. Panic slowly gave way to the crux of the situation. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Should we go back? Maybe we missed something, Ethan urged, his earnestness battling with fear. He glanced back at the house, its dark silhouette growing more foreboding against the fading light. No, Mark said firmly. We have to move. We don't know what else might be waiting for us in there. He gestured toward the thick trees lining the backyard, a maze of shadows and whispered secrets. We stick together. Always. Sarah gripped the locket, its cool edges unsettling against her palm. She had to make sense of things, but the creeping dread threatened to swallow her whole. And then the questions came crowding in. What had they stumbled upon? Who was the intruder? Why did they want the locket? They dashed to the tree lean, the grass crunching beneath their sneakers. As they stepped into the cover of the trees, the air turned cooler, wrapping around them like a shroud. A twig snapped nearby, and Sarah's breath hitched. Was someone following them? Stop, Jake hissed, holding up a hand. Every instinct screamed at them to listen. All four kids froze, peering into the shadows. An uneasy silence enveloped them like a thick fog, stretching out fragile tension into the darkness. Maybe we should split up, Ethan suggested cautiously. The idea hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. No way, Mark shot back. That's what they want. Then what do we do? Jake asked, eyes darting as anxiety wove through his voice. We keep going. Find a place where we can hide and collect our thoughts. We need to figure this out before making any more moves, Sarah said, surprising herself with her own resolve. As they began to move forward, the sounds of the night came alive. Crickets chirped, and a faint rustle in the distance sounded ominously close. Branches brushed against each other, filling the air with muffled whispers. Their footsteps were almost silent on the soft earth, a deceptive calm settling into the frantic energy of their flight. In moments of quiet, Sarah would sometimes steal glances at the locket. Its intricate design gleamed under the silvery glow of the moon filtering through the leaves as if urging her to uncover the truth. Do you think we could call someone? Ethan asked suddenly, breaking her reverie. There's got to be someone who can help us. Like who? Mark replied, skepticism lined his voice. We can't trust anyone right now. We need to figure this out on our own. Maybe we could go to Jake started, but Mark shot him a look. No, we can't involve anyone from the outside. The urgency in Mark's voice was stark. In that moment, they all knew they were alone in this. As they reached a clearing, a moonlit expanse greeted them, and Sarah could finally breathe. "Let us take a moment," she suggested, trying to quell the rising panic. They stood in relative silence, scanning their environment. Sarah could feel the weight of the locket grow heavier, its secrets ready to spill. Then Jake turned, eyes wide with realization. "Wait, what if it has to do with Mom and Dad?" At the mention of their parents, an icy chill swept over them. Memories of their childhood flooded back, moments painted with warmth, laughter, and safety. But had it always been that way? What if? That question loomed like a storm cloud, dark and charged with a swirling potential for chaos. Had their lives been a lie all along? And as they stood in that clearing, everything felt fragile, like a spider's web glistening with dew a single breath away from shattering. "Do you trust me?" Sarah suddenly asked, her voice slicing through the tension. "Of course," Mark began, but uncertainty etched itself into his brow. What if the answer lies in the locket? What if it's the key to stopping this? The siblings exchanged uncertain glances as the moonlight shimmered eerily across Sarah's face, illuminating her determination. They had to find out. There was no turning back, but just as they moved to leave the clearing, a sound erupted behind them, a heavy footfall, a snap of a branch. Their hearts dropped as shadows loomed from the tree-line. "Run!" Mark shouted, adrenaline flaring once more. And with that, they turned, racing into the depths of the night, but what awaited them in the shadows was far more dangerous than they could have imagined. In the woods around them, would they find safety, or face the truth that threatened to consume them whole? They sprinted through the underbrush, branches whipping against their arms, their feet pounding softly on the ground. Sarah led the way, heart racing in sync with her thoughts. Had they truly escaped, or was this just the beginning of something worse? "Left!" Mark shouted, suddenly veering off the path. Sarah followed instinctively, adrenaline pushing her legs faster. They ducked behind a thick oak, the bark rough against her back, and pressed their ears against it, listening. The darkness cloaked them, but it felt suffocatingly close. "Do you think they saw us?" Jake whispered, his voice shaking. "We should be gone back to the house." "No." Mark interrupted, his sharp tone slicing through the murky mist of their fear. "We can't think like that. We got out, that's what matters." The words were meant to bolster confidence, but they didn't extinguish the creeping anxiety. Sarah felt the locket still gripped tightly in her hand. What secrets lay within? What had their parents done? Why did this feel connected to them? Ethan's breath came in shallow gasps. "There's gotta be somewhere safe," he panted, eyes darting. "Maybe those old ruins by the creek." "The ruins?" Mark asked, incredulous. "That place is falling apart. They can't find us if we're out of sight." "It's worth a shot," Jake said, a spark of desperation emerging. And in that moment, their instincts united. Forward was the only option. They emerged from the embrace of the oak tree and began following the dim outlines of the woods, weaving around tree trunks and ducking under low branches that seemed to reach for them with clawing fingers. The thought of turning back was suffocating, but the fear of what might be behind them kept them moving. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled, catching herself just before she hit the ground. The locket slipped from her fingers, hitting the forest floor with a soft thud. Her breath caught in her throat at the sound. "Wait!" she cried. The boys skidded to a halt, looking back, their expressions a mixture of terror and urgency. "We can't just give me a second." She bent down to retrieve it, guilt gnawing at her for hesitating. As she lifted the shiny piece of jewelry into the moonlight, its surface sparkled like stars against the dark sky, momentarily stealing her breath away. "Sarah!" Mark's voice cut through the moment. "We have to go now." But as she stood back up, the woods around them shifted. A rustle echoed, loud and menacing. From the shadows burst a figure, a silhouette that sent icy dread curling up her spine. "Where do you think you're going?" The voice was deep and gravelly, rough like gravel underfoot, but it sparked a flicker of familiarity buried in Sarah's mind. Time slowed. The heartbeat of the woods echoed around them as the figure stepped closer into the moonlight. "What did you do?" Sarah whispered, her heart dropping as she finally recognized him, a figure from her past she had hoped never to see again. "Sarah!" Jake cried, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You shouldn't have run," he continued slowly, a twisted smirk creeping across his face. "You have something that belongs to me." The air around them thickened, a palpable weight hanging over the siblings as realization dawned. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about confronting a truth woven deep into their past. In that moment, the forest felt alive with secrets, with the echo of betrayal, and the raw need for protection. "Get away from her!" Mark shouted, stepping in front of Sarah, a protective instinct roaring to life. But before they could devise a plan, a rustling grew louder from behind them. They turned, hearts pounding once more, as the shadows deepened. Something, or someone, was coming fast. "Run!" Mark commanded again, more fiercely this time. They bolted in a new direction, breathless but charged with the looming threat. Ahead of them lay the darkness and uncertainty of the unknown, but what awaited them beyond the trees? Could they protect each other, or was the real danger yet to come? The fear surged again as they faced the night, racing blindly toward whatever lay ahead. The crunch of leaves beneath their feet echoed as they tore through the woods, adrenaline surging through them like wildfire. The darkness seemed to pulse with danger, and every rustle sent shivers down their spines. Mark led the way, protective and fierce, but Sarah's mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. Memories of the figure's face clawed at her, bringing a mix of dread and fragmented recollections. "Where's the creek?" Mark shouted over his shoulder. "We need to find it now." "There." Jake pointed, breathless and wide-eyed. "Just through there." They pushed through a thicket, branches snapping against them like angry fingers. Emerging into a small clearing, the moonlight pooled over the gurgling creek, a silver ribbon winding through the trees. It should have offered them solace, but the shadows seemed to stretch and loom, hungry for their fear. "Split up." Ethan gasped, scanning the perimeter. "We'll confuse them." "No." Mark insisted, voice thunderous. "We stick together. But if we're cornered, they'll get us all." Jake cried. Sarah felt the strain of their panic pressing around her. "We can't let fear dictate what we do, let us hide near the water. It's our best chance." They slipped into a cluster of bushes, hearts hammering in unison, breathing heavily as they ducked low. The rush of the creek masked their breathing, but only just. The sound of footsteps echoed in the shadows, sending their hearts into overdrive. "Please, let them pass," Sarah whispered, clutching the locket tightly against her chest. Was that their only salvation? The secrets held within it? Mark leaned closer to her, his eyes flickering with concern. "Are you okay?" I just recognized him," she admitted, voice trembling. "He's not just anyone. He used to be close to Mom and Dad." "Close? With what we're running from?" Jake exclaimed incredulously. "What does that even mean?" "It means he knows us. He knows where we came from, what we've done." Ethan's brow furrowed with confusion, but before he could respond, a horrifying shout pierced the air. "I know you're here, all of you. You can't hide from me." Panic twisted Sarah's gut. "We have to move. Now." They surged forward into the creek, cold water shocking their legs, but they didn't stop. The dark rustling behind them lingered on the edge of their awareness, a force that wouldn't let go. Each splash and stumble felt desperate as they moved downstream, the current tugging at them like a frenzied dance with danger. "Are we safe?" Jake gasped, peering back over his shoulder. "For now." Mark yelled, "But we can't stop." As the water flowed around them, thoughts of safety tangled with those of vulnerability. A deep breath filled with fear and determination banished the fleeting thoughts of defeat. They were alive. They could still fight. The trees thinned ahead, leading to the dilapidated ruins Jake had mentioned. There! He shouted. Hope flared within, but just as they reached the crumbling structure, they skidded to a halt. The figure loomed in the moonlight, stepping from the darkness, eyes wild and searching. You think I'd let you run away? He snarled. In that instant, a moment of clarity hit Sarah like a bolt. What do you want from us? She shot back, adrenaline sharpening her voice that he smirked, but there was something almost mocking about it. You carry the legacy, you just don't know it yet. Legacy? Mark challenged, fists clenched at his sides. What if, the truth you've been running from is the very thing that keeps you alive? Time seemed to stretch, and for a flicker of a moment, the air around them charged with possibilities. The siblings looked at each other, fear mingled with hope. But then, a low growl of another voice, something more powerful than they had anticipated, rumbled in the shadows. You've dug deep enough. Now face the consequences. They all turned toward the sound, frozen, as the figure stepped into the light. What came next would change everything. Could they uncover the truth before it consumed them? Would betrayal strike from within their own ranks? The night glimmered with uncertainty as Sarah, Mark, Jake, and Ethan faced the looming figure, shadows twisting around him like dark tendrils of smoke. Their hearts raced, each pulse echoing the weight of the past catching up to them. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was the climax of a battle they'd been fighting long before they understood. Stop right there, Mark shouted, stepping forward, a wall of protective defiance. You can't just come in here demanding things from us. The figure smirked, his eyes gleaming with a spiteful glint. Do you really think you can stand against what's buried in your bloodline? What are you talking about? Sarah's voice trembled, but she pressed on, determined. The confusion swirling in her mind began to crystallize. What legacy? What bloodline? Your parents concealed everything, he snarled, edging closer, revealing glimpses of tension beneath the bravado. And it's time you face the truth. They made choices, grave decisions that brought us to this very moment. With every word, the air thickened. Mark shifted further, his jaw tense. You think you can intimidate us? We're not afraid of you. Just then, a flash of light cut through the darkness, headlights from a car washing over the clearing. The figure faltered, turning, and in that crucial second, they all realized vulnerability hung in the air. The arrival of the car offered a brief flicker of hope, and with it, a way out. Go! Sarah urged, pushing Ethan and Jake toward the thick underbrush lining the ruins. Mark, never looking away from the figure, nodded. I'll hold him off. No! Sarah shouted, her heart clenching. We're not leaving you. Trust me. Mark yelled back, his voice fierce. Get to safety. I'll find you. The determination in his eyes shone brighter than any nightfall, fiercer than the encroaching shadows. He turned to the figure, planting his feet firmly. You'll have to go through me. With that, Sarah yanked Jake and Ethan away, running through the underbrush, leaving Mark's bravery behind them. They sprinted past thorns and branches that clawed at them, the darkness swallowing their former lives as they plunged into the unfamiliar woods. The car's headlights blinked off as a new figure stepped from the vehicle, an old ally. Are you boys all right? The familiar warmth in the voice came from Mr. Thompson, their neighbor, who had often watched over them when their parents could not. We need help. Mark's in trouble. Ethan gasped, dragging his brothers toward the man. Thompson's eyes widened. We need to hurry, then. He gestured urgently for them to climb into the vehicle. I saw the shadows, you can't stay out here. With hesitation, they scrambled inside, but Sarah could feel the weight of worry for Mark pressing heavily on her chest. We have to go back for him. She cried, ready to leap out of the car. But Mr. Thompson stopped her. If that man's who I think he is, it'll take more than bravery to handle this. We need to strategize. Think about Mark. He glanced back toward the dark woods, then revved the engine, speeding away from the ruins that held too many memories. Sarah's heart ached, but dread morphed into resolve as they raced to safety. We have to figure out what he meant, she suddenly said as realization hit her. The legacy, it has to mean something. What will we even find out? Jake questioned, skepticism mounting as he wiped tears from his cheeks. Answers, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than her shaking hands. About our family, about why this is happening. The locket must be significant, it might be the key. Right. Ethan gasped. Mom said it belonged to Grandma. What if it holds details like a clue? Exactly. Sarah urged, adrenaline surging. We can meet back at home and check it out. If we can open it, maybe it will lead to something to help us fight back. As Mr. Thompson drove them home, their hearts lightened. The danger lurking in the shadows felt momentarily muted by the bond of family surging stronger. When they reached the safety of home, they clambered out, urgency coursing through their veins, rushing inside. The three siblings gathered around the table, the locket shimmering under the warm glow of the kitchen light. Let us see what's inside, Jake said, the fear in his voice shrouded with eager determination. Together, they fumbled with the clasp, finally clicking it open. Inside, they discovered a carefully folded piece of paper, an ancient map, yellowed with age, and symbols that seemed to reflect the family's past entwined with promises and warnings. History rushed over them like piercing wind. The map didn't just show paths, they pointed to where their parents had traced their own history and choices. This could point to the answers, Sarah murmured, her heart skipping a beat as she recognized landmarks familiar yet clouded by the weight of time. And then, a sudden realization came crashing down, the light dimming the shadows of their parents' secrets had just illuminated an unexpected truth. With a deep breath, Sarah said, we have to confront this. It's our family history, our legacy. And if we face it together, we'll uproot whatever darkness is chasing us. Together, we can keep each other safe. Ethan and Jake nodded in unison, their hearts united, ready to delve into the contours of their family past. They stood as a collective force, resolute in their determination to reclaim their legacy. As the sun began to rise, casting the first light of dawn through the windows, they could feel the shadows retreating, hope replacing fear. There was work ahead, yes, but they would meet the unknown as siblings, and they would do it together, unafraid to embrace the truth that would finally set them free. The battle was far from over, but through each step they took toward discovery, they reclaimed the family bond, armed with courage and the vivid understanding that no legacy would define them. They would shape it into a force for love, unity, and protection, and there, in the heart of their home, a new chapter echoed, one brimming with hope and the promise of a future reclaimed from shadows. Now, if you're hooked and want more emotional roller coasters and inspiring transformations, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to catch every exclusive story that unfolds on our channel. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support, it makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending, we want to hear from you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. We're building a community, and your support matters.